All right. Good evening, everybody. We're going to go into executive session at this time. City Council of McLendon-Chisholm reserves the right to convene into executive session anytime during the course of this meeting to discuss any of the matters listed on the agenda tonight. So at this time, 5:45, we will be in executive session. It is 6:30. I'm going to bring us out of executive session at this time. Man, y'all making me go crazy. I'm going to bring us out of executive session this time. No action was taken. So we will convene the meeting now at 6:30. With that being said, Dan, will you lead us into our invocation and prayer, please, sir?
We can bow our heads. Thank you, Lord, for giving us this time to come together again and giving us the opportunity to deal with the issues, the problems, the concerns of our residents in the city that we have to work at managing and do our best for. So we ask for your praises, we ask for your guidance, we ask for your consistent knowledge that you can put into our minds to do what's best for all of the city. In Christ's name, amen.
And Mr. Brewer, will you lead us in our pledge, sir? You know when CJ's here, that's going to be the loudest one. So, all right, so the first thing we have tonight is before we go into everything else, is a proclamation. So I'm going to kind of start this. This is going to be a little bit different, so please bear with me. For me, there are no words that will fully do it justice when you speak on a person. You'll find that you either fall short, you leave something out, or you're not addressing the item that you hoped you would have said as you lay in bed at 2 a.m. So for that, I asked a few people on what they would say about Mr. Mark Kippett. Some are here today, and they're going to speak, but I would like to read a couple of things here. What makes a great leader? Leaders shape our teams, organizations, communities, and world. They come in many different flavors and shapes. For tonight, I want to highlight the servant leader of Mark Kippett. We need good leaders to help guide us and make essential decisions, big and small, and keep things moving forward. Our society is usually quick to identify a bad leader, but how can you identify a good one? Tonight, I want to share my experiences and thoughts about this good leader. Our paths have crossed in several directions and dedications. One, of recognizing his service to the Rotary and all that it represents. Second, to his country, which that leadership has been brought to our county and community. Specifically, the past year of his time devoted to the Rockwall County Strategic Plan, which I'm eternally grateful to him. And third, as my friend and advisor. The latter has been so valuable to me. He has taught me so much in my role as a public servant. What we must say are the qualities of a good leader. At its heart, being a leader is all about having a vision and communicating it effectively to your team and friends. Good leaders have a knack for rallying people together and lighting a fire under them to work as one towards that dream, and that is Mark. I'm describing my friend Mark Kippett. All the organizations he represents and cares about is better because of him. Thank you for being the servant leader that you are, Mark. Dana Maclick, friend, Rockwall County Commissioner, Precinct 2. Had another one come in. Volunteering is an honorable way to serve your community, but having the skill set to actually understand complex issues and help navigate your community through perilous waters is a whole other level of service, and often gets overlooked and undervalued. The expertise that Mark Kippett brings to the table is a highly valued asset in the private sector, and the fact that he is willing to give this expertise for free, benefiting others, speaks to his character and moral compass. I am a better person because I know Mark Kippett and consider it an honor to call him a friend. Frank New, Rockwall County Judge. I actually had one come in a short second ago, so we're not supposed to have our phones up here, so please indulge me. Mark Kippett has served as a commander and an officer and volunteer for the Terry Fisher Rockwall American Legion Post for 100 of its 105 years. Okay, clearly it took a few to catch that. Seriously, Mark's name and his family is synonymous with service. He has been serving his country, community for years. Mark served as an officer in the U.S. Air Force and has continued to find ways to serve this country, this county, and both in service and out of uniform ever since. Mark has a lifelong partner, his lovely wife, Lorna, who also is a huge friend, or a huge great friend, and volunteer to the post and community. Mark and Lorna have a wonderful daughter, Maddie, and are about to be grandparents. By the way, Casey is a great name for a grandchild, boy or girl. We are grateful for Mark and appreciate all he does and continues to do for our community and our city. So for me, I can say that I am proud to call Mark Kippett a friend, a mentor, and more importantly, a brother. As veterans, we have a brotherhood of the highest order, and that is something that builds a bond that allows doors to be open. We're better for one another to have grace, understanding, and the knowledge to know that we shared that same oath. Mark and I spoke about oaths on a recent road trip and how important they are, and how, as those that have served, we understood that oath to be more than a country, but to make sure that we honor the person to our right and left of us. We would watch their back to make sure that they were protected. Mark, I can say, shares a passion to protect this community that he lives in and to be a part of it in a way that fosters a vision that we can all want. He tries to listen and understand and what it takes to dig deep into the issues that can be hard topics so that we can find solutions. With that, I would like to ask Clarence to say a few words.
Testing 1, 2. There we go. There we go. Request was who wrote the last two letters? Okay, no. Was it Casey Ashmore? Okay. Well, my name is Clarence Jurf. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of Rockwall, and all those comments that were read previously, I added all the information to them. So what I have to say is very short. Not. Mark Kippett. I met him, we've probably been friends about 10 years now, but it started off as a friendship and it's become so much more. Mark brings to the table what you see every day, 24/7, is Mark Kippett in his finest. Leadership, compassion, a heart bigger than the world, and he's always has a tendency to want to make someone better. And that's what I find he does for all of us every day. We talked about this 2050 strategic plan, and you heard from other people who have talked about it. Mark looks at things at ground level, at 30,000 feet, and then can turn around and then look at it probably for about 10,000 feet, give it clarity, and then put that clarity into motion. I'm proud of Mark as the person that he is. I'm proud of Mark as a person that he's helped make me become as both an individual and as a leader. Your proclamation is very, very well deserved, and behind, not beside, every strong man is an even stronger woman. So Lorna takes credit for that too. I love them. I love you guys, and thank you for what you do, because together we are stronger and we can continue to be stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarence. And last but certainly not least to speak is what will soon be the grandchild's name, Casey Ashmore.
Only the name, Casey.
Right. Just a suggestion, sir. Thank you guys for welcoming me here and asking me to contribute and putting up with the puns, which are only meant in good humor and in great appreciation of our friendship. Mark is a servant leader, and we've heard a lot about that. I think we sometimes we hear so many words and read so many words in our modern life that we kind of don't remember what they mean. It's defined as one who shares power, who puts the needs of others first and helps people that he's responsible for and not responsible for develop and perform at the highest level possible, their highest level possible. Not his expectations, the ones you set for yourself. Mark is a true servant leader in that sense. Mark's served our country for years, often in the kind of duty that goes without accolades, in rooms without windows, without celebrations and parades, and still with the casualties and stress of war, and we are grateful for it. Mark has continued to serve his community and his country after taking off his uniform putting back on his contractor uniform, taking that back off, and still finding a way to support Rockwall County, the city of Rockwall, the city of McLendon-Chisholm, the Terry Fisher American Legion Post, and the Rockwall Rotary Club, and how he finds time for all of that, and his family is really impressive, which makes everybody around him realize we can all do more. We can all do more. And one thing that I am grateful for Mark is that he made leadership easier, made goals achievable, showed you how simple things can be when you put your mind and your effort to it. And, you know, over the years that I've worked with Mark, not all 100 of the 105, but many of the years, 98, our post has the distinction to send more children to Boy State, Girl State in Austin and Seguin, Texas, than any other post in the state of Texas, and we're one of the smaller posts. So just think about that transformation just in the last decade or so of Mark's involvement, and him and the rest of that group. The Rotary Club, its outreach programs, Lone Star Casa, I mean, it goes on and on and on. So Mark's been all in and making a difference here in McLendon-Chisholm, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to help him celebrate that, because he's done that everywhere he's lived. And also, Mark, go Cowboys.
So with that, I'll ask Mark to meet me in front of the dais, and we'll read his proclamation. All right, so proclamation. Whereas we are here today to express our gratitude and to honor Mark Kippett for his service to the country and his service to our community. Whereas Mark Kippett served as a United States Air Force officer from 1979 to 2005, retiring as a colonel. Whereas after returning from the United States Air Force, he was employed by Raytheon Missile Systems in Tucson, Arizona. In 2010, he relocated to Rockwall with Raytheon Intelligence, Information, and Services as Program Director of Tactical Intelligence Systems. Whereas Mark Kippett, after retiring in 2014 from Raytheon, moved to McLendon-Chisholm and became active in the community. Whereas Mark served as a key negotiator in the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department transfer into the city of McLendon-Chisholm. Through his involvement and coordination with city council members and the Daughters of American Revolution, he helped construct a beautiful, one-of-a-kind memorial for county residents to honor veterans who have honorably served in our armed forces. Whereas Mark served as a chairman of the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, 2020 to 2021, in development of the McLendon-Chisholm Comprehensive Plan, working with every community, making sure all voices were heard, and ensuring the document would be friendlier and relevant. He has served on Planning and Zoning Commission since 2020 and is currently the chairman. Whereas Mark is also very active in the Terry Fisher American Legion Post 117, having served there since 2015. He has been commander for the past 3 years and was recently re-elected for the 24-25 years. He is also a member of the fundraising board for the Rockwall Noon Rotary and the County Strategic Plan Development Executive Committee, working with community leaders of the county to develop plans that will be used as planning documents for roads, public safety, infrastructure, development, and fiscal requirements. Whereas now, therefore, I, Brian McNeil, Mayor of the City of McLendon-Chisholm, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby present Mark Kippett this proclamation of appreciation. Thank you, Mark.
So the goal was to get you to tears, did it work? Close. It was as close as you can get.
One more. If you have a few words, please indulge us.
No, I don't have any. I just thank you. It was really unexpected. I know who was behind this. I know the two of you were in cahoots. And love the city, love the mayor, love where we're going. Keep up the momentum. That's it.
Congratulations, brother. Love you, man. All right, one more.
He wants it for the city of Rock.
It's coming, it's coming. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, so with that, the rules of decorum are in effect. And do we have any citizens' comments tonight? No citizens' comments tonight. We'll close that out before we get some. All right, so I guess we'll move into consent agenda. Does anyone on the council see anything that needs to be removed? If not, I will take a motion to approve consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Hold on, I have to, before we do that, there is an error that does need to pull off the minutes, and that needs to be corrected, yeah. So that's the only thing. I'd like to move that we remove the minutes from the consent agenda and put it to the regular agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, with the second, all those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we'll move on, and we'll put that on regular agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the rest of the items on consent agenda then?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the rest of the items on the consent agenda.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, show that unanimous. We'll pull the minutes off now and discuss that. Paul, what do you see there on the, I'm assuming this is 9.1?
Yes, sir. On page 6, which is section 10.4, the accounting for voting is incorrect. It has ayes being Councilmember Easter and McLendon and Day, and nays being Councilmember Brewer and Day. I did not vote for both. I was an opposing vote. So the aye needs to be corrected. I'm assuming that would have been Mr. Tucker's vote.
Okay, so we'll get that corrected, and we'll, Mr. Holler, we can go ahead and approve that with correction, right? So we don't have to just move this around. Okay, so I'll accept a motion to approve the correction on 9.1 with the amended change.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. So we'll move on now to items for discussion. Angela, I'll go ahead and read these. Items for discussion, 10.1, presentation and discussion on property tax rate. Conrad.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. You'll note in front of you, one of the small packets you have is a notice of public hearing on tax increase. You'll notice, and you'll remember back on June 8th of this year, that the council discussed and gave direction to the staff unanimously to seek after the voter approval rate. There's various rates that the state allows you to look at and to evaluate as a council. The voter approval rate is the rate that has a percentage increase based on the consumer price index or inflation that, as you remember, used to be 8%. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, it got reduced by the legislature down to 3.5%. So that would be the rate that you can raise the percentage without any eligibility for petition to vote or to have the residents vote. If you raised it higher than that, you'd be subject to that. And as you can see that the rate that's on here is 0.096256, which is slightly lower than our current rate. So even though, and you ask how could that be? Well, with the new revenue or new growth added to that, it still went down, our property tax rate. So very slightly, but it went down. You also see the no new revenue rate is 0.074 on there. With that at the bottom of that sheet of paper, and this will be published in the newspaper, you'll see the for, against, present, and absent. the state requires us to have you be presented this rate and vote on the proposed rate. This was not scheduled as a vote tonight. It's just discussion. So you'll see it again next city council meeting to vote on the proposed rate, not on the actual rate. Then the second council meeting on September 24th, you'll see it again, and it will be for action on it. So this is all based on state rules and the state's tremendous desire to have residents not miss out on hearing what's going on in their community as it relates to property tax. So that's what this is. And you also remember that, and on the backside, it shows some of the average household taxable values, and you see how it is based on our community and what the rate is for that. So that's just for your information. You'll see that, as I said, another 3 times, another 2 times. You'll also have a public hearing on that next time so the residents can vote and talk to you about it. And then finally, the last time, even if you vote in favor or against next time, that's just for the proposed rate, and then you'll have your actual final rate on September 24th. So are there any questions about that process that the state has required every city to undertake?
Councilmember Easter, do you have any questions, sir?
Yeah, I do have a question. I want to make sure I understand this. So that our current rate is .0743 or 2
No. That's the no new revenue tax rate. Our current rate for 2023 is on the next page in there. At the very top, it says 2023, and that's .0096578. That's our current this year's rate that you voted on last year. And then what's proposed for this year is what you see on the front, the .096256, which is slightly less, a 0.33% decrease.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember McLendon, do you have any questions, sir? No? Councilmember Brewer? Councilmember Day?
Hey, Conrad, with respect to the no new revenue tax rate, when you calculate that, is that taking into consideration increases in property taxes and other revenue sources, or is this just simply no new revenue with respect to property tax alone?
Solely property tax.
So this would just keep the number of dollars coming from property tax equal across the board, but so in other words, we're not balancing off of it.
Correct. With new growth,
Yes,
it would drop it based on the value of new growth. That's why the rate goes down to 0.74 or whatever.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So just to be clear, the reason that the rate dropped is because of the increased appraisal values of properties here.
And that may be one of the avenues. Generally, it's one of the bigger avenues.
Yeah. And there are no other factors that are entering into this? I know I'm coming off of Councilman Day's question, but there are no other factors that play into the reason for the decreases?
Yeah, they just look at, this is developed by CAD.
Okay.
And they look at what the rates that are being paid in the households and appraised valuation as it increases. That's what took part of that 3.5%. So it's a 3.5%, but in reality, it's a lot less.
Okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Day, you have something else?
Yeah, one last follow-up question. Do these numbers also incorporate the new, I hate the word rooftops, but people say it so often, the number of new rooftops that will be coming out in 2024, 2025 under the tax rolls?
No, they do not. Not until they're actually here.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no more discussion, we will move on to item 10.2, presentation and discussion on budget fiscal year 2025. Conrad, back at you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is an exciting time for, I believe, for the entire city, but also for staff, and we enjoy this time. one of the reasons, and some of them may sound really simplistic, but you have before you a proposed version of our FY24, FY25 budget book. It's not in final. I mean, we're going to work on it and we're going to keep giving you things. You'll have about a month to review this, ask questions. Any questions we welcome. There's absolutely no silly questions. All of them are good, and we'll write them down and we'll send them out to all of you, so you can have those questions asked and answers. Please, whatever is the easiest way to communicate with me and with staff, please do that, whether it's text or email or phone call or coming in, whatever it is. Please do that if you have any questions. Let me go forward, and we're going to walk through this book a little bit. You'll see that it's in very proposed state, and I think by the end you'll be very excited to see what we get to. We've had a software that the council approved for purchase for about 3 years, and this is the first time that we've gone through this. And to get through this, utilizing all the software, it's software in a cloud, so we have to access those people in a cloud, per se. I mean, we don't have them right next to us or on, to help us, so it's been a little trying in certain areas. But what it will do to us is it allows us to meet all the GFOA requirements of the Distinguished Budget Award, which is a great award for any city, no matter the population, but crazy high for a city of our population to be potentially receiving these. And why I say that with such certainty is for the past about 8 or 9 years, I've been a reviewer for the GFOA and have reviewed budgets from all over the United States and Canada for this award. And so this software will help us get that award, get to that promised land where we'd like to be. And so what the GFOA Distinguished Budget is telling us, telling the council, telling our residents is that we're giving you something that's very valuable and understandable for you to read. There's also an award called a PAFR, which is a popular annual financial report. That is more charts and graphs and other things, but as you look through this, you'll see that we'll have lots of charts and graphs in here to make it more readable and understandable. But we'll even add that PAFR is the nickname for it to this. So a lot of different requirements, but one thing you won't see after, well, you'll see a little bit based on your questions and based on your feedback, is that you'll have a balanced budget. Tonight you have a balanced budget. So you can come throughout the next month and say, no, I don't want to fund that, take that out of here. And we'll show it, but we'll bring it back for you, a council member, and 2 of your best friends to make us completely take it out. But we'll definitely note it, and we'll definitely show you the implications of it so you can get and vote on it and pass that. So going through this, and let me tell you, you also have another little booklet next to you that has, it's more of a, let's see if I have mine right here. Oh, with your tax, behind your tax stuff, and we'll go through that a little bit too. You have about 3 or 4 pages after your tax stuff that we'll go through as well. So going into but let me emphasize, this is a balanced budget. So revenues equal expenditures. So sometimes that's a little confusing, and not to speak anything lower. I know you all understand all this stuff, but sometimes it's hard to understand some of these budget stuff, and we try to make it as easy as possible. But when we say revenues equals expenditures, it means incoming revenues. If you look through the revenues area, which we'll go through quickly, we have those match the expenditures, albeit a budget is a guesstimate. Budget isn't hard numbers. Every month you get a financial document like this, and you have one in your packet tonight, that are based on the budget that you passed a year ago. And it says, how close are you? How close were we in our guesstimate to how these line items really are working? And then you may have some red flags. I've had council members come in and talk to me about some red flags. One of them, one question that I received was our bank fees were, if you look in here, our bank fees have skyrocketed. If you look at in this fiscal year, this is not the budget, this is the financials, and this is actual data. So it's not guesstimates, it's actual revenues in, expenditures out. But if you look at this on the general fund, and you see, and somehow these glasses or my eyes are not doing great, but you'll see, let's see, in the expenditures you'll find bank statements, and it's extremely high. It's like 1,000% or something like that, or 300%. Very, very high. The expenditures are more than what was budgeted. But if you look at the revenues, under other revenues, what's included that line item was budgeted at $5,450, and so far this year, we've received $623,000. And why is that? Well, we take credit card, a big part of that is we take credit card payments, and based on the credit card, there's a percentage that the bank pulls out to pay the credit card company, whether it be Amex or MasterCard or Visa or Discover or whatever. The builders and others generally are the only ones that use those pay the city money. We don't take any cash at the city, so we just take credit card. We take checks if they want to write checks. And that's part of our audit process that we've chosen to do it that way. But we charge 5% as a city to do that process because we have to pay for the machine as well, and we have to pay. So we get a little bit of revenue out of that. But at the same time, we pay like between 2.5% and 3.5%. So if there's a corresponding expenditure and revenue that will show that one's way up and that one's way up. So in reality, we're and it was just because of development, pretty much. I mean, I would say 90% of that. Another thing with this budget that we'll go through, and if you ever have any questions about any of those, please ask. Because one of the things that we had to do in the budget book is we had to, because previously, we were using QuickBooks, and this software is not, it is compatible, but not crazy compatible. We had to change all of our chart of accounts. And we wanted to do it anyway, so it will be a little bit hard and may draw some questions, because as you compare to prior years, just like on this one, you may not see that corresponding that you've seen in past years. We try to show on everything what it was the prior year and what it is current year and what we're proposing, and we'll go through and I'll show you that. But all the chart of accounts, as much as we could keep them the same, we are, but we changed our entire chart of accounts in this year's budget, and it will be a plus. It's already been a plus for us. We were a little bit all over the place in the past chart of accounts. Not that our finances were out of place. The finances are run excellent, and give kudos to our contract finance people, Melissa and Ray, primarily. I'm not sure if others in the organization do stuff, but we work directly with those two all the time through all of our financial stuff, from payroll and HR to all of our AR and AP stuff that we do weekly. And then preparing for audits and all the other stuff. So we're getting better is what I'm saying. It's exciting, even though you're going to look at this book and say, oh, you're getting better, huh? It's gonna, every time you see this book, it's gonna be, you're gonna be more excited. Except, like if you turn the book to page 4, you see a cover page, and that cover page, if you look, if you put your glasses on, your magnifying glass or your light on your phone to read it, you'll see that it's funny that it's this page right here that you just read. So this is the page that will be on this page when push comes to shove, both that page and the page behind or next to it. So it's starting to put things in here and show what we have, but but the numbers are all correct that we have so far. We've met with all of our city staff, all of our department heads, and have gone through all their requests. We'll go through that in a second. We asked them to put, if they could run a perfect department, what would they need? And so obviously they know they're not going to get funded for their perfect department. And obviously we have two departments. We have administration and fire, was all our 2 departments, instead of some cities with 10, 15, 20 departments. So it goes a lot faster going through this. You'll also see as we scroll through, it's about 49 pages this now. It'll probably double or more. A history of McLendon-Chisholm. We'll have a basis for budgeting. We'll talk about budgeting. And if you look on page 7, you'll see an org chart that's started, that's needing to be updated. There'll be that. So when your questions come, what's up with this org chart? It's lousy. I would ask that you just ask the question if you want, but we're aware of it and we're looking at it. Then on page 8, it talks about fund structure. And again, as I go through this, I don't mean to talk lower because I know you know all this stuff, but I just want to let you know how we as a city are doing some of this stuff. We have 5 major funds and would like to have a 6th fund on here. And one of them that is appropriate for tonight, we have a Sonoma Verde Road Fund. It's not shown in your monthly financials. It's kept in a different place. It's targeted money just for Sonoma Verde roads and infrastructure, and we pull it out of the pit to get money for. That's part of the negotiation, what we receive as a city, based on the different phases of the pit, which you'll talk about a little bit after this. We have a public safety, we have a general fund, which is our major operating and maintenance fund. Most cities, that's where everything happens generally in their general fund. Police and fire and EMS generally are part of, generally are part of the general fund. However, in our city, we've pulled it out through council direction so you can see the public safety separately, and we've created our own fund with that. Some cities create not just a utility fund, which we have a utility fund, but they have a water fund, and they have a sewer fund, and they have a storm sewer fund, and they break all their utilities out into it. We don't have that. We have a functioning sewer fund. We provide sanitary sewer to about 930 residents or households of the city, not residents, and that's growing. And as some new developments come in, we're going to have some more sanitary sewer. And as we have commercial development come in, there'll be more sanitary sewer. But that's about half, around half of our overall number of households, units in the city. The rest are septic systems. And they're, as most of you probably have, as a septic system, unless you live in Sonoma Verde, basically is the only place, but it's growing to others. So we have the general fund, we have the utility fund, we have the public safety fund, we have an interest and sinking fund, which is a debt service fund. We have one major debt here in the city that, as we look through, and we may or may not hit it, but it's about $1.37 million that we still owe on it, and that's the facility that we're sitting in tonight. And that's, I think, a 30-year term. Forget what the interest rate is on it, but as you see, you'll see it was 1.4 something last year, and it's slowly going down, but we keep all that money separate, and it's part of our our property tax. So you'll see that percentage to pay INS always comes out first, or interest and sinking fund. So we have that. We also, if you look at the financials, we created a COVID fund, or an ARPA fund, America Relief Act, but I forget what it is. Rescue Plan Act. Yeah, ARPA is what I say. But it's the COVID fund where every city throughout the whole United States receive money. Cities, counties, school districts. You think, how do we get so much money out there? Everybody got cash to help during the COVID time when things shut down. And I mean, there's lots of thoughts on that and what's going on. And thank you for that. And so we're also proposing, which you won't see it in here in your booklet, but you'll see it next time, is to have and the auditors proposed it, is to and Ray Smith during the last two budget visioning workshops has proposed it, that we should have a capital fund, a fund that basically things that we don't have maybe enough money to buy it right now, but we deem it something that we're saving for the future, so it helps us to not have to potentially go into debt into the future. Some things, like this building, like a house, a mortgage, it's legitimate, or at least it's acceptable to most people to go into debt for. But that's what a capital fund is, so we can start saving and doing. And we're going to propose putting $1 million. Right now we have like $4.7 million in our general unrestricted fund balance. And you'll see these, I'll say these numbers, but you'll see them as we go through here a little bit. And our overall budget is just over $4 million this year. So it's over 100% of what our annual budget is. The auditors recommended somewhere between 40 and 50% is where we should be in our unrestricted fund balance for general fund. So cutting it in half, freeing up, not necessarily freeing up, but asking us to allocate that $2 million approximately to other portions of the overall budget. We think it's most prudent to put it into a capital fund. And it would be all of you that's doing it, so it may be restricted in words, but it's your restriction that if you needed something that's outside that into the future, you could always go grab it and use it for uses that are unforeseen now in some other fund if push came to shove, in the utility fund, or if you got a main sewer problem, or a water fund, or whatever. I mean, you could utilize that in different areas. You wanted to buy something, whatever you wanted to buy, equipment or something. We define capital costs as anything. It's so low, we define capital costs of something that is anything that costs more than $5,000. So that's way low, but most of the things that you'll see in here are higher than that. So we're going to propose, you won't see that capital fund in this booklet, but you will see it next time in the booklet, and we're going to put that in. But it's definitely something you need to think about. We're going to propose $1 million in the public safety fund and $1 million in the road fund. We just talked about road fund the other day, and there's an engineer that we were talking to, and he said that another city in the Metroplex had 1.1 mile of road repair, road maintenance. And because of all the culverts and the dikes and the bridges and other things that were involved in that, the engineering estimate came up, and they said, guess how much? And I thought, oh, I'm going to guess high. And I guessed $3 million. Because generally they talk like $1 million a mile for road maintenance. So I jumped to 3 times that. The answer was $22 million. So where do you come up with $22 million for a mile of road? You save for it, you bond for it. There's different things based on the community desire and your understanding. There's different ways of getting money. So that blew my mind. You guys don't seem like that is that big of a deal. So we talk also on page 10 about the process, the roles, and then on page 11, the timeline of where we've been and where we're going, all the way to September 24th. Our new fiscal year starts October 1st, so that's our deadline. Then on page 13, you come to the fund summaries. And now you're starting to get what a lot of people think, the nuts and the bolts, the numbers, and to evaluate and to do numbers. If you look, the nice charts on there, some of us look at it and it looks like the same color. So we'll contrast those colors a little bit as we move forward. But if you see toward the bottom of the thing, you'll see total revenues and general line items. You'll see in the columns, you'll see FY24 adopted and then FY24 projected. Where we're changing, there's certain things during the year and you'll see in the timeline that we'll bring to you on either probably the 24th, but maybe the 10th, where you've approved funding that wasn't initially in the budget back a year ago now, but you thought it was important. One is like the sound system in here, audio video. It wasn't in the original thing. The architect stuff for the Heritage Center wasn't originally in the budget, but you deemed it important. And so there's certain things like that. The funds used for the disaster cleanup and stuff weren't in the budget, but what we'll do is we'll come with an amended budget on that, and so you can see those different projects, and we'll amend the budget and for the end of the year. But if you see this, you'll see the total revenues on the general line item, and we'll get more specific as we turn the pages. You'll say, what size is our budget? And it shows 4.3 million, I think. It's sort of light. But you'll see that it's more than what we project and a lot more, 3.9 that we had. So it's growing budget. You also may say, well, how's it growing? But you also see that in the revenues and in the expenditures, we have trash and recycling. We have solid waste that we've taken over. And we show that in here. Because when as you know, all the money comes in and then we pay our bills. So we have expenditures and revenues. You also see trends as they come down, as you see generally here. And as you turn the page, you'll see where they all go and in the different areas. And again, we're looking at the revenues and then of the general fund up here. So let's see. And then a couple pages more in, you'll start the expenditures, and you'll see a chart of where all the expenditures, that's more of a robust color charts that are easy to read and see. And then you'll go and look, and you'll see all those account numbers that have been updated, and you'll see under account ID is our chart of accounts, but you'll see what was adopted and projected. And what's projected is we take actuals through July of this year. Obviously, we haven't finished August, so we don't have financials for August, but we take the actuals the books have been closed through July, and then we look at August and September of the previous year and add those dollars to the actuals for those 2 months, and that's how we get the projected. So if you wondered how we got those projected numbers. Again, it's a guesstimate. Things could be dramatically different this August and September than it was last August, September. It probably isn't dramatically in September, is because we talked to staff about not spending in September other than required costs like water and power, and not to spend, so we can close out those books for the month of September as well as the year, our federal fiscal year. You'll see those, and you'll see what's proposed. You'll see a lot of those line items. We've looked and seen how well we do on each of the line items. I would ask you to look at those and if there's questions to do it. But a lot of those are not changed just based on if there was a big change, but sometimes we've renamed it or we've moved different things, so it's an easy answer, but please ask it. As you look and you get a red flag and say, what's this? Well, how come this is? Ask that. And just keep that note and send me a million emails or texts or however you want to do it so I can respond to you so you can feel very comfortable with these numbers. But 9/10 of this stuff is real close, if not the exact same as prior year. You'll see another one is there's telephone and internet. Somebody asked about telephone and internet. If you look at the general fund one, it's in your financials that I showed you earlier, in your monthly financials. If you look at the general fund, it's doing real well in the fiscal year. You turn a few pages to another fund, and hate to say it with the chief sitting right there, but the public safety fund, the telephone and internet, is way high. I mean, and so why is that so high? Why is that overspent? Well, another thing that we started to do this year that has never been is we're doing allocations and cost allocations. So general fund has been subsidizing the fire department in certain areas, and now we're charging the fire department. So it wasn't budgeted that way, but now that it's sent that way, and when we get invoices, it appears that they're potentially not being worthy, or not worthy, but good with their in that area. But in reality, it's been that way, but it was poorly budgeted last year because it wasn't split up into actual things. It was being subsidized by the general fund. So they're doing fine, but it'll show that way, and that's how we'll respond and show you specifically about that. And so you can go through, and there's lots of the expenditures, and they're real specific. And please look at those as you go through. Let's come and then you see the public safety fund, and it goes through all the different funds. One of the things, and then if you go back, you'll see the ARPA funding, the utility funds, and this document is also downloaded onto our city website for our residents to look at, because next council meeting, there's going to be a public hearing, not just for the tax rate, but also for the budget. So they can come and tell you what they think about it. And I do the same suggestion for our residents, that if there's a question that you think, wow, this is crazy, I don't understand this, let me know, and I'll let you all know what the questions are and what the answer is as we go through that. So let's hop back to potentially this. Maybe we look at this ARPA funding first. The council has identified, and we've spent money. If you see that, it has just spent and planned. And as I mentioned before, the ARPA rules stated that we had to spend, we had to encumber all of our funds by December 31st of 2024 and spend all our funds by December 31st of 2026. That was in the final rule, and finally in the final rule, the third final rule, they changed from how you can spend your money from infrastructure type needs, which it started out with, and still in our city, a majority of all the money being spent will go toward infrastructure type needs. As you look at this thing planned on doing that, is the sewer line expansion on our main streets, or our State Highway 205 and FM 550, where the council is very interested in putting sanitary sewer for all the commercial entities on all four corners. By doing that, and by the amount of the sewer that we've already brought over to one side of the street, it's anticipated to cost another $520,000 of the total remaining available 661 after we've paid a little bit up on top for just engineering type fees. But we will spend a high percentage on infrastructure like originally was intended. But in the triple final rule, they said any city or entity that receives less than $10 million can spend the money however they deem most necessary to assist their city. So we can spend it on whatever, but I anticipate the council has recommended that we spend a high percentage on that main and main. Another reason with that is as commercial entities come through and hook up onto our sanitary sewer system, we're going to charge them the percentage of what it costs. So we'll get all that money back so we can spend it again. But it'll be over time. So it won't be, anyway, it will be, as commercial comes in, we'll receive that money back unless the council decides some type of incentive package to where you'd rather get them in than have them pay or whatever. There's different things that could happen. So that's what that is, that ARPA COVID. And if you look at in the booklet under ARPA or COVID-19 funding in that fund balance, you'll see some negative numbers, but all it is we're showing that we're spending all that money. But this is the more detailed one that you can see. So I wanted to make that so you could see specifically, but there's a reason for that. Also, a thing that I mentioned earlier, we have two sheets in there that are just sort of columnar sheets. That the first one, which has the most amount has a landscape face on the page. It shows your chart of account number and a description, but then the request is the second to the last column, and then the last column is what fund it's going to. All those things that you see on that page are requests that are currently that we put in the budget and part of the balanced budget. The next page are requests that they've done that goes in the portrait format that we did not put in the budget. But it's all things that have been requested, so you can see. So in reality, the main changes to the current year's budget, and probably something that you should think about if you're really going to spend time evaluating, are these two pages, because they're the main changes. The other ones are just operating. It costs us so much for supplies. It costs us so much for the lights. It charges us so much for the water that we use. It charges us so much for the overall just operations of the city that is in the budget there. But these are things that we've had staff say, these are what are important to us to get there and to provide a great service to our residents. And that's the ultimate goal of all this, is to provide a great service to our residents. And you'll see some of the things that are happening. Some are more visible than others as you go through. One of these things are street signs that's in here. Some of you have seen a couple of street signs, and we have people asking to have some of the city logoed street signs go in their neighborhoods, and we've put some in there. That's under account number. It's under road repair, but it's street signs in their request. It's account number 100 701 70100 for that. So different things to run and operate and better ways of doing things for our community. We wanted this sort of a general overview in this. We've talked way overview in the visioning of what we want. And this breaks it down to some actual numbers. And then as you ask questions, and you'll see take these 2 pages and march it, and go through the monthly financials. And if you see something in the monthly financials, ask about those as well. We want you to have all the information you can to figure this out and to make the best budget available. You'll also note, just throughout the Public Safety Fund, you'll see that, page 23. You'll see at the very end of this book, this booklet is a glossary of terms. So sometimes I or somebody may use different terminology, and that's a nice thing. To this day, sometimes I go back and I say, what in the world? And then, oh yeah, that's what they're talking about. So it's not something that, I mean, I've been doing budgets for 30 years. And so it's something that I think is a helpful thing. But the charts, they're kind of rudimentary right now, and I apologize, but I wanted just you to see it enough so you can see that there will be a nice chart. You will be able to, and a lot of times, charts really help tell the story where the numbers are a little bit harder. But you read the numbers, and then the charts will say, "Ah, got it," of what that is. We have another chart that is not in here yet, and we showed you that in your budget visioning thing, of a dollar bill and a property tax, and we'll put it up next to the tax stuff if you remember it. And there's 3 major property tax entities in Rockwell County. There's the ISD, there's the county, and then there's our city. And then that graphic shows a dollar bill and what percentage the city gets, which is about 6% of the overall property tax bill. That the school district gets like 70-something%. The county's rate is over 3 times our rate that we charge our residents, the lower. So sometimes you say, oh, we have a low property tax rate, and a resident may say, wow, I pay a lot of property tax. It's like, well, not to the city. Yeah, your property overall, tax overall may be high. Not that I'm saying they are. I know that the Rockwell ISD has touted, and they compare themselves to other ISDs, and theirs is low compared to other ISDs out there. So I think in Rockwell County, overall, for schools and county and really for the city, there's a huge bang for your buck that you're getting here. Sometimes it seems like a lot, but when you compare it around, you can see that we do, that the officials throughout this area, i.e. you all, the elected officials, have really tried to tighten the belt and provide as much as you can for limited services. So that's what one of this. I have one more little check mark in here. Oh, it's about the ARPA funding, and we talked about that. So that's the overview of the budget right now. The budget, the financials. One other thing that we're going to do, we're going to give to you that we've worked into these budget numbers, is that we've looked at the fees and charges that the council has approved. That's a separate ordinance that you'll have to do, and we've updated the fees and charges chart to make sure that we're not subsidizing developers or anybody else that we charge fees to, that they're going to pay for what they're doing in our city, and that our residents aren't going to pay through the budget. So sometimes we have to raise and look at those fees. There's no increase in anything. However, the one proposed increase, and hate to say this, but it's based on, and it's almost verbatim from a study that was done about 3 or 4 years ago on the sanitary sewer rates. Those will go up a little bit not based on that. It'll be 100% pass through from what North Texas charges Rockwell City, who then in turn charges us to flow our wastewater into the wastewater treatment facility in North Texas. Those rates go up, and we don't have a choice but to pass it on, especially with our low rates that we charge in property. We just have to charge it. It's just a pass through, but there will be a slight increase in the sanitary sewer that you'll see.
it will be less than $5 a month. But that's the only fee that will go up, other than if you, services, like if you develop, and different costs of different inspections and other things like that. The people that are getting the benefit are gonna have to pay those costs. Again, so we don't subsidize them as a city. All right, any questions? I would put everybody to sleep. I know it's been a kind of a general and not as specific as maybe you were thinking, but I've given you a lot of specific to start out with, and by the time we get 2 weeks more, well, less than 2 weeks, because you'll get in your next packet, and any time, if you want, as we update this budget, we can kick it to you, but you may not want it until we get it to another time, we'll kick it to you.
Well, thank you for
All right, yes, sir.
the short but brief
Sorry, it wasn't short.
presentation.
I wanted to ask if they could increase the budget for ink.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
If you could,
Oh,
yeah, so we could actually read. It came
I
out a
apologize.
little light. Let me just put it that way, so I'm willing to pony up a couple of dollars for that myself.
What I'm going to do is, and I apologize, it's 7:36. I'm going to just do a 5-minute recess so that we can take a quick restroom break, get the questions done, and then we need to get Mr. Webb on that next agenda so he can get home to family. So a 5-minute recess, please, at 7:36.
I don't get a lot of time to talk, so this is my. And I kept on passing through things. They timed you on the sundown. There was so much more that I could have done, but I didn't. Hello, are you Dan? Jason. Jason, okay. Okay. So she has a presentation, like those 5 slides or whatever we have.
I think that's on for me.
to follow what they're saying without looking at anything? So, next meeting, you're gonna vote on it. And then we'll be able to look at it. There's no paper, there's no one of these, so I can go look at it. As I said in my presentation. It's on our website. It's online. Go there and pull it right out, you put every number. Okay, go there, and then pull it.
I know the second time.
Did you get
I got a confirmation.
okay, did it say, was it a confirmation of the wait list, or did it actually have a hotel?
No,
Yeah.
that's on the website. Back up. That was,
Okay, look and see.
that was the next.
We gotta go.
But I got, what I
But
did.
no, I do
is
have a
I went in-
reservation because it's saying to me.
Just go to McLendon-Chisholm.
We're not talking. Oh, no. The two of you together. Don't blame me.
You know what? I'm gonna be able to sneak up on him.
Make sure which one you got, because I had set aside. Oh, today? Oh, okay. I have not seen it. Okay, so I'll look and make sure. That way I don't have you double. Okay. That's fine. It's just making sure you don't cancel the first one. Because I knew that just, said it was like, okay. Thank you.
It is 7:43. We are back from recess. Sorry for the extra 2 minutes. So after the presentation on that budget, I'll start with Mr. Councilmember Easter. Do you have any questions or comments on this?
No, I think you did say it's going to be on the internet where we can download this and we can search terms and so forth. And as far as this book goes, is there any way to trace the precedence or dependence from some of these values so you can figure out what numbers, how they were derived and where they go, kind of like you can do on Excel? Or what the heck? You mentioned what the predecessor software you were using, the Intuit.
Yeah, and the QuickBooks.
QuickBooks.
Well, if you look at the revenue line items, we don't have anything directly identified that from this line item, it goes to fund this. Oh, it's overall revenues within the general fund go to fund all the line items within the general fund. So, is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I think so. But anyways, just for purposes of moving this along, I can bother you.
Okay,
later.
yeah, don't
Thank you.
bother me. You won't bother me.
Councilmember McLennan, do you have anything? And remember, Council, Conrad said that we can, as you go through this, if you have more detailed questions for the spirit of expediting, rather. Councilmember Brewer, do you have anything?
No.
Some of those questions, Mayor and members of the council, if you would write them out, I'll write them out because I'll send them to everybody else. So if you already have them written out, that helps. I'll answer them, and then everybody gets to know the answer to those, which I think is beneficial.
Okay. My only statement was, when I looked through this, I see 10.2, the discussion, was the actual, the booklet we have, was it posted for the public to be able to see yet, or is that on the website? Because I know we discussed it. It was an item for discussion. I just want to make sure we didn't mess anything up by not giving them an opportunity to look at something.
No,
Or is that for the public hearing, then we're okay?
it should be on the website right now. Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Day, do you have anything?
Yeah, just, I guess more fundamentally is I'm going to dig through this, and you know that I'm going to read every line item, because that's what I do. And I've already got a couple of things that are just kind of flashing out at me. And really, I wanted to find out what your guiding philosophy on a lot of this stuff is, where some of these numbers are coming from. I mean, when you look at the increase level, I'm looking over here at this thing here. We see numbers that are kind of eye-popping with respect to increases in terms of these expenditures, 73%, 196%, things like this. These are wholesale changes to the philosophy of how these accounts are being conducted, are they not?
No, they aren't. They are some, I talked specifically about chart of accounts, so it may be something where something that was in a different account now is included in that account. It could be historically or current, how development is going. It could be that some, like I mentioned, cost allocation that is happening through there. I mean, there's a variety of things, but anything that you want to identify them, and we'll tell you specifically what's going on there. I think that was kind of what Councilmember Easter was talking about.
And so there isn't some fundamental change in baseline philosophy from which this is derived. I just want to know if there is, as I'm going through it, so that I'm not saying, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like I think I did mean to, but I think I misspoke on the fire and the telephone and internet. They just have their regular costs. However, in prior years, their regular costs, portions of it were being subsidized by the general fund, and it should have been all along being paid for with fire in the fire fund. We caught those, and we said, no, we want to show specifically what it costs to run the fire department, what it costs to run City Hall, what it costs. And so we're trying to get as tight as we can so you can see all those, and our department heads can see all those and evaluate and manage through all that stuff.
Thank you. That's the clarification I was looking for. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I really don't have any questions, just maybe a comment, is that I've been through a couple budgets so far, so a lot of this is certainly, it kind of highlights and gives you a kind of a elevated view of what the budget may look like, but there will be a lot of changes in this. Historically, there have been. I'd like to look at this week coming, and then there was a question about having a time where we could all sit together as a panel and discuss the budget rather than just individual questions. We can do both, but there was a discussion about having a mandatory, I think I passed it as a resolution at one point, a mandatory budget meeting that met in public. So I think we would like maybe at least one of those to occur in the future, maybe later than not, but whatever time the mayor preferences, so that we have an open discussion, so we get some input from one another and look at specific items that we may or may not agree on and hash things out, rather than piecemeal questions back and forth to the administrator who dispenses answers, and we do appreciate that. I know that we've done that. We did that last year. However, in the past, when the first year I was on City Council, we did it with, I think we had 2 or 3 open forums where we discussed budget and with regular meetings. And for me, it was much more fruitful at the end to understand exactly what we were dealing with. And for some of the new folks on the panel, budget's a challenge, especially your first one, because you don't even know what a fund is sometimes. I mean, it seems just the most basic of definitions, you kind of lose out on it. But just my impressions of what we might be looking forward in the very near future.
Yes. So I'm good with that. What's the cutoff? Is it like September, before we have to have everything?
September 24th.
24th. So is there a way we can post a workshop where we meet, just maybe an hour block out an hour, 2 hours where we sit down as a workshop collectively as a group. I think that's important that way we're not all trying to figure out different questions, different answers. Obviously, it'd be open to the public. We can set that up on a Saturday. If y'all indulge me, I'll look at my phone for the calendar here. If I were looking at this for September of 24, could we say, I would probably say we'd have to look at the 14th or the 7th to be able to, and the 7th might be too fast. Would the 14th with council up here, if y'all are able to look at your calendars with me, just so we can maybe try to lock this down real quick. The 14th or the 21st could be some days that we could do 09 to 11 o'clock. That would be a Saturday. That's right, you're in California, so the 21st. You're in California the 21st. Well, he's in California on the 14th. Ooh. California. I'm reluctant to try to do it during the week. I don't have a problem doing it during the week. I know there's a town hall on the 18th with Burdette. 17th is a Tuesday. Do we have anything on a Tuesday on the 17th?
There's a planning commission meeting, but we could go in
Well, we could be
another room, yeah, whatever.
Well, if it's open to the public, though, is the problem. Gosh, I'm trying not to have a weeknight, and I apologize, gentlemen. The 16th then would be a Monday.
We could have it the 17th over at the fire department and just and publish it over there, and you could sit in the bay, and we could have if any residents.
Are you okay with that, Chief? All right, so everybody up here, if we do something, let's say, okay, Floyd, this would be for you then, the 17th. What would be an early time that we could do something, or are you out of town on business? That'll work. Okay, good. What would be an early time so we don't try to roll into the late night? Or I guess the earliest time you could make it, I guess. You have the drive, so I'm trying to. $5:30, give you time to get home. I'm straight here, so 5. Okay, so if the 17th from 5 o'clock to, we'll just say 7, we'll post that for the fire department to allow us to use the bay. And if that's good for everybody, can we just go ahead and say that will be the workshop to get any final questions that you may have? Are you good with that, council? Everybody? Good? Good? All?
I may have a childcare issue, but I'll have to get back to you on that. I mean, that's
right.
my biggest issue.
7th. Okay. Well, they can hang out on the fire trucks.
And they will.
There's 4 babysitters over there. Yeah. So let's go ahead and put it for the 17th because we're going to have to get these questions answered. So, Angela, if you can make note, the 17th we need to post that we will have a budget workshop over at the fire department from 5 to 7. And it may not take that long, but we at least need to try to get these addressed so that we can have this done by the 24th. Thanks, everybody. So if no one has any more questions, let's get...
Mayor, can I just one real quick, just to represent the staff. We did send out an email to every council member the first part of August asking you specifically about that, and got 0 response. So we didn't plan anything, we didn't do anything, because no council member responded to that. So we tried to do it. So I don't want to go down, because I remember Councilmember Tucker saying that, so we tried to add that, and not one thing from anybody. So 17th is fine and perfect, and we'll hopefully will be very, very productive, and we'll be prepared for it as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Conrad. Let's go ahead and get on to business. We'll go to 11.1, Angela. 11, I'll move it when we get to it. So 11.1 is what we're on.
11.1, discuss and consider action regarding approval of a final plat for the development of 8 single-family residential lots on 20 acres of land located east of the intersection of SH 205 and League Road, with frontage on League Road to the east of the existing retail buildings.
Okay, I will take a motion for 11.1.
Yes, I'd like that to move that we approve a final plat for the development of 8 single-family residential lots on 20 acres of land located east of the intersection of SH 205 and League Road.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so Conrad, it looks like it's on you, but I think we've seen this enough and discussed enough. I'm just going to go ahead and just move this meeting along. Councilmember Easter, nothing. Councilmember McLendon, Councilmember Brewer. I love the speed. Councilmember Day. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything on this item?
No, I don't.
All right, so we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, show that unanimous. Sorry for the wait, Mr. Webb. Move it then. All right, so we'll go on to 11.2. Angela, sorry.
It's okay. Discuss and consider approval of an ordinance approving the annual and updated PID service and assessment plan per the Public Improvement District PID bonding requirements.
Okay, I will entertain a motion on 11.2.
Make a motion to approve the final plat. Yeah, approval of an ordinance approving the annual and updated PID service and assessment plan per the Public Improvement District bond requirements.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we will go to Conrad on this one. It looks like you have some guests here as well. Conrad.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is, as it's stated, it's an annual service and assessment plan that is required for the bonding process, that information sent out that has to be, as the city's role in this overall PID, has to have that approval of it before they kick it out to everybody. We do have the principal of P3 here, and other guests to support her into giving you an overall discussion on this process. We also have a short, if you're going to use we have like a 3, 4, or 5 slide presentation that'll give you a good overview of the PID, what a PID is, and the process that we're at. So that's there. And I'll turn it over to Mary. Mary Petty is here to represent.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mary Petty with P3 Works. Your financial advisor is also here as well. So Conrad did ask for us to just give you a high-level PID 101. So the service and assessment plan was adopted after the development agreement was negotiated years ago, and you actually had a different PID administrator. And so as you have marched through the process in accordance with that development agreement, the developer has come before you requesting, as they develop, a levy be placed on the property and bonds be issued. And so your last issuance of bonds occurred several years ago, but the statute requires that every year your service and assessment plan is updated. It's updated for a couple of reasons. People can prepay a PID. So if there's a prepayment, you don't want to continue to collect their assessments. Other tax ID parcels can change. So anytime that there's an over 65 freeze, you'll see those tax parcels split. If someone sells the property and they abandon the tax parcel ID, a new parcel ID is given. And so the statute requires that annual update for numerous reasons. So there's ongoing administration, but I'll walk through it. Can you advance it? Thanks. Yeah, so just a couple of reminders. PIDs are not political subdivisions. They're not MUDs. They're not taxing district. You are the de facto board. And so you, the body, created that PID when it was a petition given by the developer to the city, and the city acted on it. It allows the city to extend infrastructure without burdening other taxpayers. So the assessments are collected from those property owners to pay for infrastructure that benefits them and only them. So you're not burdening the rest of the taxpayers within the city to pay for infrastructure that's only located in a particular subdivision. It also allows you to keep all your normal ad valorem taxes. So before PIDs were a utilized tool, oftentimes developers were asking for sales tax reimbursements or your property taxes to reimburse them for costs. And so again, this was a negotiated transaction between the developer and the city, and it outlined some of these components. And so that's what the PID is and how you see it today. So this is the statutory requirements. These are broad, sweeping statements about PIDs in general. Generally, it applies to this PID as well. So you can have a PID in your ETJ or in your city limits. Most cities are using PIDs to incentivize annexation to occur because the legislature has changed all the rules about annexation, and you can no longer involuntarily annex most properties. Again, we talked about the benefits received. So you can't go out there and just tax or levy an assessment because the developer says, I want this much reimbursement. It has to be actually tied to cost, and it can only reimburse for public infrastructure costs. So it can't go pay for the land cost. It can't go pay for the developer's carry costs. It can only pay for that infrastructure that you, the city, or another tax-exempt entity like the city is going to own and operate. So I mentioned earlier, assessments can be paid in full. Generally, the developer elects for that installment to occur, and those are typically 30-year installments. And so those installments are paid over time unless an individual selects a prepayment. Now, unlike property taxes, you levy every year. These are levied once, and that calculation is done, and so they're structured very similar to a mortgage repayment. And so if someone wants to prepay, it is a calculation that is done, interest stops as soon as they pay it, and then their taxes, or their tax ID is recorded in the real property records as having that lien released off of it. I mentioned that assessments pay for infrastructure, but that infrastructure, when bonds are issued, that infrastructure cost is reimbursed to the developer through the proceeds of the bonds. So in this case, the Sonoma Verde assessments are being collected. Those assessments are transferred to a trustee that has the fiduciary responsibility to make those bond debt service payments on your behalf. And then in one instance, you have one particular phase 1C, that did not issue bonds. The developer at that time elected for that to be an actual reimbursement. So every year those dollars are collected, and we have to segregate and calculate that for staff. And so then they have to hold on to it, and the developer has to submit a request to be reimbursed, and we have to go through that whole process of releasing those funds to them. The rest of the assessments are transferred to the trustee, and they make those debt service payment components. And then your administrative expenses are all included in the annual installment. So your general fund is not burdened by the cost to administer this PID, including your county costs. You have arbitrage calculation components. Now the property tax code requires a service and assessment plan be filed in the real property records, and you see it's a hefty number of pages. Even those fees are put back against the PID, and the PID assessments provide for the payment of that. So it should be a budget neutral impact to you all, other than your time to listen to me talk about PIDs. Go ahead. So when this PID was created, you had certain financial advisors and bond counsels that were participating in that negotiation, the development agreement, along with your city attorney. And so you have an underwriter and a trustee. They don't necessarily work for the city, but they work on behalf of the city. And so there's a contract between the city and the trustee called an indenture. That indenture governs each series of bonds that were issued. The underwriter facilitated the issuance of that. Your bond counsel and your financial advisor were integral to the issuance of those bonds. And then our responsibility is to make sure, again, that not only is the service and assessment plan updated every year, but anytime anyone requests a prepayment, title companies call. Oftentimes, you have title companies or mortgage companies that are searching liens, and they're like, hey, if there's this lien, what is it? How do we? So it's our responsibility to do all that education component. And then monitoring, once those dollars come in from the county, we're making sure the county billed the correct amount that you all approved. They went through a programming change, so that was really fun 2 years ago. But that's part of our job, is to pay attention to that and make sure those things are moving along smoothly as they are supposed to, so that that doesn't fall to your city staff, because they have more than full-time jobs.
Hey, Mary, may I add just one quick thing?
Yes, sir.
Real fast to the slide right before this, and you don't have to go backwards, is remember, all the costs and everything of the PID is paid from the PID. And I'm trying to give you the big overall view of that, because it's very easy, and I think Mary will back me up on this, it's very easy to get lost in the weeds on PIDs, because there's so many different rabbit trails to go down and trying to figure out and yada, yada, yada. But it's very important to understand that all the costs of the PID are paid from the PID. Why is that? Because, as she mentioned, the PID cannot burden the city as a whole. That would be benefiting a private group, a private area, at the expense of the rest of the city. That would violate Article 3, Section 52. So it's very important that anytime you get down, and it's fine to get down into it. I know we got a lot of council members that love the details. They can live in there, Councilmember, and that is fine. But just remember, when you're in there, to apply the big picture overall, the PID has to pay for itself, and that's why. Sorry. Thanks.
No, you're fine. Thank you. So there's a couple of different types of PIDs. There are PIDs that never issue bonds. You all have that unique situation where you have that Phase 1C that didn't issue bonds. And so you have a very awkward hybrid blend, because you're having to service not only a long-term reimbursement to the developer, but you're also having to service those bonds. And so with every levy, so with every improvement area that's out there, you have a series of bonds that are issued. Each one of those bond components has between 14 and 17 accounts being held with the trustee. There are, some of them are fully funded, like your debt service reserve account. It earns interest. There's components when you have high interest yields, like we do now, that we make sure your arbitrage calculation is being overseen, so that we don't get in a situation where we're having to, go screw up with the IRS, although that's coming because we got good interest rates, and you sold at a time when you had really low bond rates. And so you have those components that it's our responsibility to walk through those and make sure the different professionals are being provided the information they need, and so that we can make sure those components are being taken care of. So again, the creation and administration, the cost should be covered by the PID and by those assessments. The debt is non-recourse to the city, so it's not like you issued GOs and COs. It's not backed by the full faith and credit of the city. It doesn't include any of your dollars from your general fund. It is solely financed by the assessments that were levied and that are paid on an annual basis. So obligations for the PID, generally the city inspects the public improvements prior to acceptance. You have to maintain those public improvements, and then you hire and oversee a PID administrator. On the right are several of the duties and the responsibilities of the PID administrator. If you looked at a calendar and how many times the PID administrator was touching either the trustee or the bond counselor or the FA or the city staff, you have multiple touches throughout the months. Sometimes it's more than that. During a full year cycle, if the developer is still in development and you have a developer still in development, they're required to file quarterly reports. So they're filling out those quarterly reports, they're sending them through our office, we're checking the obvious, like you didn't leave it blank, or you didn't say that you sold 5 homes last quarter and now you've only sold 2. And then you also have the responsibility of annual issuer disclosures, just like you do on your own city bonds. Those are disclosures that you file once a year. So it's our responsibility to put those together and to send those to staff, your FA and bond counsel, for review. And then working through your delinquencies, we make sure we monitor that. We make sure that we see delinquencies that are within reason. So you have a delinquency component. Since it's on your property tax records, it's being collected with the property taxes, you're usually a very, very low delinquency. If we were to see an anomaly, we would start reaching out to the city attorney, bond counsel, FA, and start talking about what those next processes would be. So that's one of our responsibilities, as well as monitoring those components. So that's a very small list, but it's kind of a general list of what's done. No, that's okay. We can go on. So within your PID, you have a set of governing documents. And so you have city documents, which are documents that you all are party to or you all created. And so those are your service and assessment plan, which we're here to look at the annual update today. But you have a bond indenture for every single one of your bond issuances. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that if we're moving assessments from cities' collection, because that's where the county wires it, to the indenture, that it's flowing funds according to the indentures. That's part of ours is preparing those certificates and making sure those components are being done. The development agreement is always your overarching component. And so anytime there's a question or there's a concern, we go back to the development agreement to make sure we understand what the intent was and we roll it out. Construction and funding agreement speaks to the reimbursement the developer receives at the time they construct it. So again, every time you levied, you had a CFA. Once the construction is completed, generally is a document that is complete because it's been acted upon. The only residual part is the collection of the assessments because those bonds are outstanding. I mentioned the monthly trustee asset statements that are very voluminous. We provide you a one-page summary just so you can see. We send that to your interim finance director, interfacing with them for any questions they have, any preparations of the audit. And then all the other documents on the right-hand side, those are all documents that are not created by you, but we're monitoring and overseeing to make sure that they have the right information in them. So whether it's making sure that the service and assessment plan, assessment roll that's adopted tonight gets to the county, and then we're pulling from their reports, making sure that what was actually sent was actually billed. And usually that's human error or computer error, but we work through that. Yes, ma'am. So where are you today? You had the development agreement approved in 2007, and the PID was created in the same year. You can see where you have some zoning components, and I just leave that up there because that is something that is important or has been important in the past to McLendon-Chisholm. And then you have your various assessments that were levied. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, no more assessments will be levied because all those improvement areas have been completed from an assessment standpoint. They might not have been completed from a development standpoint, but they're completed from an assessment standpoint. Yes, ma'am. So this gives you those various phases. The previous administrator called those levies by phase. Best practice is that it's an improvement area, so you see the nomenclature change, but that generally kind of breaks out how many lots are in each of those areas. Okay, so these are your various SAP updates that have been done. Your initial levy was in 2015 with the issuance of the first series of bonds, and then you see on the right-hand side, sometimes it just says annual service plan update. That means that it was just a regular annual update, just like this one is, and no new action was taken. Other times it had updates that were amended and restated or amended. And so when we were hired, we in 2019 amended your annual service plan because we found errors from the previous administrator, and we had in our audit, and we had to correct that and make sure the property IDs were correctly reflecting the right assessments and right size that. And so the last two amended and restated, so 21 and 22, were the issuance of bonds in both series of years. So they were your phase 3 and your phase 4A and 4B. So just a summary of the purpose of the service and assessment plan update. Again, it's required by statute that updates the assessment roll. Also in the back, you have a home buyer's disclosure. So a couple years ago, the legislature wrote into the property tax code, not only did this document need to be filed in the real property records, but there was also very specific wording that had to be included in a home buyer's disclosure form. So every single lot type inside of the service plan has to have its own home buyer disclosure form. Attached to that is the amortization schedule for the reimbursement. So anytime a seller sells, they're required by the property tax statute to provide this disclosure. And so we provide it here at this juncture, so it's in the real property records and can be found by anyone. But we also have it on our website where it's downloadable, and they can actually access it there in a format that's not scanned, and it's easier for them to fill it out, especially for title companies. And then just oftentimes it provides updates to the community. So this developer is still in development in Phase 4A and 4B, and so while they do file their quarterly reports, those quarterly reports, as they change the information, it only gets updated in the service and assessment plan once a year. And so this is where we would capture those updates as well. Any new plats filed, any budget changes. Just because there's a budget change on cost doesn't necessarily mean there's a change in assessments. That can't be done unless they come back to you, and then we have to go through the public hearing process and file notice and things like that. So that summarizes kind of what the PID is, where this PID has been, where it's headed, and what those components are that those assessments are used to pay for. So again, your financial advisor is here. I'm happy to answer any questions, as I'm sure he would too.
Councilmember Easter.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. That was a great presentation, and putting these slides together was very helpful for us, I think. I wish I would have had the opportunity to look at this earlier, because it would help put this into some better context for me. But just to kind of keep things moving along, there's some nomenclature that I was trying to understand. Sure. Is Phase 3 and Phase 5 of Sonoma Verde involved in any of these improvement areas?
They are. So they are classified as 4A and 4B. Okay. And so in the original service and assessment plans, and you can find these on our website, you would have the previous version, which would have been your 2022, and we certainly, we submit those to the city, but happy to send those over to you. It would have the map that would be much larger than this map, so it's easier to see, and then we'd be able to show you which that phase ties to those improvement areas, but yes.
And currently, there's payments being made for homes that are constructed or under construction on Phase 3 and Phase 5. And if there's no one living in those, the developers carrying those costs for all of those homes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The developer or the builder, so whoever...
So the developer or the builder, one of the two?
Yes, sir. So if it's a home builder, if the ownership's transferred to the home builder is the owner of record, and they receive the tax bill, and the assessment is on the tax bill. So if it's the developer that still owns the dirt and still developing, they're the ones receiving the bill, and they're the ones making the payments.
And so for these houses that are under construction, that there's multiple developers, multiple builders for the various home sites.
So they would only be responsible for the assessments on the lots that they own.
Okay.
And that is how it's recorded at the tax office. So we don't go in there and say, oh, you transferred ownership in June, you get to pay half of June. It is what is on record with the appraisal district or the appraisal board January 1, and who they say gets the bill. And then after that, if there's a transfer during the year, that's done by the title company to true up those taxes due, because it's on the tax records.
Okay, I have no further.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember McLendon, you got anything? Councilmember Brewer?
One of the things I was looking through was they were talking about delinquency and prepayment reserve requirements. It seems like it's never full. It's never met. So
yes.
Can you talk about that?
Sure, happy to. So the Texas statute, so you have federal tax statutes, you have Texas statutes, you have the PID statute, you have property tax statute, and others, all govern what happens with this PID when you have bonds issued. So one of the state's allowances is that additional interest can be collected, which is 0.5% over the percentage on the bonds when they price. Those dollars that are collected flow into the additional interest account, which is used for prepayment or delinquency reserve. So a great illustration of what could happen there is someone elects to prepay their assessment in April. Well, you just made your March payment. Your next payment is September. Their prepayment is small enough that it's not significant size-wise to redeem the bonds, but the bond investors are still earning interest because you haven't redeemed the bonds. And so you can't go back and collect from that person their interest that didn't get paid off because we hadn't gotten to a place to redeem. And so you hit that reserve account for that interest that would be needed to make the bond investors whole. On the flip side, delinquencies we've not had any delinquencies, but were we to have delinquencies and we had legal bills, we don't want to come to the general fund saying, hey, you need to pay the lawyers. But we would have the ability to draw down on that if we, in the event we needed it.
Councilmember Day.
Thank you for coming. First off, is it possible that I get a copy, a PDF of this, printed off and submitted to my email, please? So, and I think this also needs to be made available to the public for them to be able to look at and review. This is a very important presentation that should be seen. I learned a lot. I read the entire thing. I'm the guy that does that. And there were some things that I had a lot of questions about, and so I'm glad you're here to answer some of these questions. And you already started to answer some of them. Right away on this additional interest situation that came up, was looking at the little boxes and going through the accounting on this. Effectively, you're using that as a form of bond insurance, correct?
I would defer to the city's FA on that because it is a statutory allowance that the bond council and the FA have all reviewed, and it goes into there for those purposes and is governed how it can use it. If we were to ever need to tap it, that would be something where we would bring in your financial advisor and your bond counsel and say, here's the situation, here's what we have seen happen, and then we would defer to them. But I think bond insurance is specifically different.
Hi, Jason Hughes, Hilltop Securities, financial advisor to the city. So yes, it is different from bond insurance.
Okay.
As Mary said, it is a reserve that's allowed by statute, but completely separate from a third-party bond insurance.
So if the interest is not dispersed to cover a bad debt, let's just call it that, what becomes of the money?
So it's typically, once it gets to a certain balance, it can turn off, one. Two, it will then be used to redeem bonds, so it does pay off bonds early.
Oh, okay, that's an unexpected answer, actually. I have to think about that. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, so I have to really think that through. There's a couple of terms that were brought up earlier.
And I'm sorry, yeah. I apologize. Let me say one other thing. One of the reasons why that's included in statute is so we don't have to hit the actual reserve fund, which is a material event that the city would have to report. So if we do have, as Mary said, a situation where there's a delinquency, we can actually go and tap that fund, use that to cover the delinquency for the bondholders and not have a material event. So that's one of the reasons why it's in state statute.
No, I understand. Thank you very much for explaining. For me, just in terms of an equity issue, you have people that are paying, and they're paying the extra 0.5%, and somehow that's covering the the delinquent payer, right? Ultimately is what's happening. So that's something that catches my eye right away. So I can see you smiling. You're like, you know where I'm going with that. A couple questions I had also coming through this, and I'm grateful you went through this because I was looking at the fees being charged by the PID administrator. One, who is the contractor, and who picks the contractor?
So we're your PID
Because
administrator.
the fees are quite large.
So we're your PID administrator, and so there is a contract that was executed probably in 2019, I think is when we took over. And so it's done by improvement area. And so each improvement area carries its burden because, as I described, each bond issuance is by improvement area. So every time you issue a series of bonds, you have all the roles and responsibilities tied to that bond, which are separate and apart from the next bond issuance or the next bond issuance. And so the contract is $2,500 a month for the first series of bonds, so for the first improvement area, and then $1,250 for each additional.
That doesn't jive with the numbers I'm seeing over here. When I'm looking at, for example, improvement area number 2, I'm seeing administrative costs of $26,220. You're telling me a much smaller number.
So for example, like you have phase 1C. So that counts as a separate improvement area. And so the way, as we have worked with bond councils over time, and it's not just we, it's the industry, the costs that are shared by the entire PID are pro rata. So you'll see in there that there are certain trustee costs that are just tied to that improvement area. Well, it doesn't get shared with anyone else because it's tied to those issuance of bonds. But when you have like PID administrator's duties or even a legal bill comes in, it gets shared pro rata across those areas. And so when you see the number in Phase 1C, it actually goes into Phase 1C's depository account for administration, and it's held segregated. So if we're doing work for Phase 1C, we have to bill Phase 1C. If we're doing work for Phase 1A, we're having to do an accounting for only Phase 1A work. And so you're actually having to keep an accounting of all the separate improvement areas. So while the contract's one contract, and it has it broken down by the phases for an aggregate purpose, then when it gets allocated through the service and assessment plan, it's based on the pro rata share of outstanding assessments. So the larger the improvement area with the larger phase generally means the more homes, generally means the more bonds, and so that carries a larger share of the administration costs. And so that's part of the industry standard that occurs.
And then with respect to that same line of reasoning of looking at how this stuff is all administered and gone through, I still don't fully understand what they're getting for their money for this, because they're paying a large amount of money. I mean, this is not small. And I also noticed that looking through this, that the bonds, the underlying bonds, this goes to the gentleman, so maybe you can answer this, that's not pro rata. If you get a 3% in one area, someone else might be paying 5% on the underlying bond at another location.
The interest rate?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll defer to Jason.
As Mary pointed out, we do have 4 bonded PIDs in the city. The rates were set at the time in which we actually priced the bonds, each of those priced at a different time, so it's subject to the market. It's also subject to where the improvement area is in its construction phase. If you have something that's an upfront bond, for example, where there's no vertical value on there, that's going to carry a higher interest rate, right, than if you already have homes and you have a diversification of your assessment payers. So that's why there's different rates for each separate bond issue.
And so and you guys sell the bonds at par?
I would have to go back and look, but
so if you're getting a premium rate at 5%, where does that premium go?
so it's not a premium. I think they were
You know where I'm
all
going
at
with
par, but I would have to go and look.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have 2 more questions, actually. Who's the trustee that collects the payments and distributes them?
Sure. I think your trustee here is Wilmington Bank and Trust.
Thank you. And who selects that? That's by contract with the city?
That's through your indenture, and that's established at the time of the bond issuance, and it's usually your financial advisor and your bond counsel in conjunction with your city staff making that selection.
Okay. And then who was the underwriter? Was that also on the
On
bonds?
this transaction, I think FMS Bonds was for all of them.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, that concludes my questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions just on the assessment. When it starts and who pays it. You said that the builder or the developer starts paying on the assessment. When would the developer start paying? Is that on the purchase of the property itself?
So that's a great question. So the developer purchases the property and no assessment is on there. There's no levy. So at the time that the developer comes forward and says, okay, city, we are ready to self-impose a levy, they sign a landowner's consent that says we're consenting to the levy of this assessment, and then your financial advisor, your staff, your bond counsel, the underwriter, our team, we work together to say, okay, the developer anticipates issuing bonds, let's just say today, they'll be completed with homes by the end of this year, December, and so we would be issuing bonds on a project that's mostly constructed. It's almost completed, and then they would be turning it over to home builders. And so at that point in time, that levy goes on in August. The first bond payments usually are September. The bond payments are usually September and March. So you probably wouldn't have a bond payment until March. But onto the assessment roll in October, you would have the assessment that would make the whole March and September of 2025's payment. So the assessment went on the property tax rolls in October. They're due 1/31 of every year, just like property taxes. And so if the developer sold the land to a home builder in December, let's say December 1st, the developer would pay all of the, installments up until that point, or their pro rata share, and then the builder would pay the remainder. And then the next year, the builder would own it for however many months before they sold it to the home owner. And so just like property taxes, those assessments are prorated as they go through the various selling stages.
So it's expeditious if the builder builds it quickly and sells it quickly.
And for the developer to get out from under it, yes, sir.
Good. Thank you for the answers.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the presentation as well.
Yes, sir. And I believe city staff has that presentation. Okay.
So if there's no further questions or discussion, then we've already had the motion in a second, so we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Or abstain?
Yeah, I'll be abstaining.
Okay, so 4 yes and 1 abstain. All right, so 11.3, discuss and consider action for approving updates to the employee benefits package. Conrad.
Hi, Mayor and members of the council. We're always looking to find great things to motivate our employees, and I appreciate Mayor McNeil and some council members that I've discussed of ways that really we can help in making our employees' jobs more enjoyable. I mean, when they feel like a home here, and we're all part of a team, it's a great thing. So there's certain things that we can look to give benefits to, and that's why public-private entities have benefit packages. So I thank our elected officials for that. We're here to suggest that there's a couple of holidays that maybe we could add on, and we would propose that we add on the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is the third Monday in January, President's Day, which is the third Monday in February, and Good Friday, which is the Friday prior to Easter, in March, April, depending on when the full moon comes. And we also would like to suggest, at the same time, the ability to create a Christmas money fund where it would be employees' accrued vacation or PTO hours that they have earned, that currently the city doesn't pay for any PTO hours, and the employee can accrue them to a certain percent, or a certain number that you have on your sheet, based on the years of service. And then the city pays for it, or those PTO hours, based on that accrual amount at time of separation. This would propose that there would be, I called it a Christmas money fund, that every December 1st, that the city could pay out up to 25 hours of annual PTO based on the current year's accrued amount of paid time off. So not their overall bank but just what they accrued throughout the year and unused. So if they've gone on vacation, it would be less. So up to 25 hours, and then they could come and say, I'd like to we'd have a form, and they'd say, I'd like to buy 10 hours, and I make $20 an hour, and that would be $200. That was my quick math. To help with their Christmas money or whatever. I mean, it would be up to them, I just call it, but a lot of cities utilize something like this, and employees appreciate it. So they can have a sort of a savings bank that they count on to utilize for Christmas costs. But it would be free for any type of, pay their water bill with it if they wanted to. So those are the two things that we'll present before the council, and appreciate your review and potential approval of.
So I had the discussion with Conrad, and I am a huge proponent in morale. So for the military-minded and even those who have served in the police, at least in the Marines we had, it was troop welfare, mission accomplishment. And I've always felt like if the morale is high, I would say Floyd would agree with this, Jerry for sure with, police, Dennis, when that morale is high, your staff will do more. It's just the way it is. So that then leads into number two, mission accomplishment, the things they'll do for the city. There's a book by Lee Iacocca. I don't know if anyone knows who Lee Iacocca is, but he used to do a 6-hour workday. It was a mandatory hour workout, morning or afternoon, whichever one you chose, and an hour paid lunch. You literally only worked 6 hours. And what he found is his employees produced 10 hours of work in a day because the morale was so high. So I didn't realize Councilmember Day was even, a proponent of this, so thank you. I just felt like if we gave 3 extra holidays, there are already ones that most government facilities are taking off anyway, so I don't feel like we're losing anything. But it gives them a 3 paid holidays, and then, the up to 25 hours based off of what their input is and their longevity gives them just a little Christmas bonus, just a little something to say, hey, thank you. Big believer in that, although my whole time in the military, I never got a Christmas bonus. Floyd, did you get a Christmas bonus as a Navy SEAL? Okay. So, but at least it gives them something. So that's where this came from. It looks like it stemmed from discussions and just wanting to build morale and try to make sure our staff know they are appreciated. So that's where I'm at on it. I'll defer down to Councilmember Easter if he's got any comments or questions on it.
Sure, I do have a question on it, but we just got through going over the budget. And I'm wondering if this is factored into it or what's the cost associated with this and if there's any way to know what that is.
Even though I've already impressed you with my math skills, I did a quick back of the napkin review based on overall city hourly rates and came up with a little over $12,000 a year if everybody took the maximum amount.
Okay, thank you.
And is currently not in the balanced budget, so we'd have to make some changes.
Councilmember McLendon, you have any? Councilmember Brewer?
Do y'all allow floating holidays, like taking, say, Veterans Day on a different day?
We do have floating holidays in the city.
Councilmember Day?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to Conrad about this. I told him, I said MLK definitely needs to be on the list. That needs to happen right away. And the other two, I totally think are perfectly fine. President's Days and Good Friday, I'm sorry. The answer he gave me was a little about $12,200 for his back of the envelope estimate with respect to the cost. He did that literally after I'd asked him, so you need to give me that so before we come to the meeting. So he did that. And actually, it doesn't seem terribly expensive. The one concern that I have is that, when you give people vacation, you want them to take it. You really want your employees, and the last thing I want them to do is kind of sell their sanity for the sake of having Christmas bonuses. You know what I mean? That's one of the concerns I have. But I'm not opposed to doing this, but I just want to impress very strongly upon the staff if they hear me saying this. I'm not trying to buy you out. What I want you to do is take your vacations if it was up to me. So.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I actually had a little bit of trepidation just about this item in the sense that if I opposed it, boy, the staff would not like me very much. And so, by default, I think I'm going to have to pony up to it. I did have concern. I am in favor of encouraging staff morale. I've seen what's happened over in the fire department, and certainly the morale over there is very high. And we've encouraged it by giving them raises every year, it seems. But they're a very cohesive unit, and so and they work well together. And so I want to see the same thing here with the staff. I was concerned about the cost. That was, that's the dark side of it. You have to ask about cost because we're up here representing the folks and trying to keep costs down. But $12,000 is pretty minimal for I think what the result will.
Yeah, you'd probably be making your own copies. Not that you usually have a lot. Yeah, so that's all I have. Conrad, do you have anything you want to add on this, or you good?
No, sir, I think it is appreciated by all of staff if this is a positive. I know that in the past, the council's been very generous, and so as representing all the staff, we thank you.
So I've got to apologize. I don't know if I just had well, I won't say it because the link works, different terms, but we had a motion and a second on this, did we not? Okay, that's what I thought, so I apologize. I was sitting there thinking, I think I jumped way ahead, so Floyd will probably text me to do push-ups later. So I apologize. We had discussion first. So with that, we'll go ahead and do the motion, and we'll get back on track on the next one. So I'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we adopt this. Is this a resolution or what is this? To approve this package.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Show that unanimous. Tucker, they'll still make your copies for you, good sir. And I apologize for being out of order. So item 11.4, Angela?
Discuss and consider action for rescinding city council approval to take legal action against RCH Water Supply, Inc. for its violations of the Texas Open Meetings Act on its vote on June the 7th, 2023 board meeting to put the RCH system out for request for proposal.
Do I have a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to consider action for rescinding the city council approval to take legal action against RCH.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so it's open for discussion. Mayor Pro Tem, it's on you, so if you don't have anything, we can go straight to discussion on it, or if you want to add anything.
You know, this stems out of a resolution that the previous city council voted on back in June of '23. And at that point in time, things were fairly contentious between RCH and the city. And so we pressed at that point in time for possible litigation against RCH for pursuing sale to a private entity, which was Aqua. And for the life of me, I actually voted for this thing. And in retrospect, I think we were being led down a path that wasn't to our benefit. So the reason I'm providing this today is, and I had completely forgotten about this, I thought all legal actions had been, there was never a legal action taken, but the potential for one existed, and I didn't even remember this until I had a conversation with, an email conversation with RCH President David Naylor, and he asked that prior to having a second meeting, that would I consider rescinding this. And I had to do some homework just finding this thing, and found out that we had passed this, and I think it was unanimous. And so that being said, I said, absolutely, I don't think that the tenor, the tone of this current city council would liken itself to approving this. And I actually apologize to the citizens for having voted on this initially. But that being said, yeah, this is not something that we want to pursue. We have no interest in pursuing. It would be a waste of taxpayer dollars. So that being said, I'm very strong in supporting this rescission.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Easter, do you have anything you want to add on this one, sir?
Yeah, I do. I wasn't on the city council when this was voted on, and I do kind of remember some of how things were at that time. And I think right now, from what Dan has said, council member or Mayor Pro Tem to me, Tucker, is that this was a precondition for a subsequent meeting with RCH. And it is my hope by rescinding this, it will be part of a more amicable discussion and relationship between the city and RCH. And with this, I think we want to work in good faith with RCH on any subsequent water-related issues. And so that's why I think it makes sense to me. And something also that Conrad reminded me of last Friday, I believe, is that RCH still has not adopted a franchise fee agreement. We've got a franchise fee agreement, and they haven't done anything about it. And I think this has been a year now. Is that correct, Conrad?
Yes, sir.
And so, at least my understanding is their failure to approve it is costing us some revenue from the transactions. Was it 3% of their sales? I'm not sure what the number is, but I think this rescinding it might go towards getting that resolved also. At least that is my hope. So, any of that ways, that's all I have to say.
Councilmember McLendon. Councilmember Brewer. Councilmember Day.
Yeah, so I wasn't available. I wasn't even on council at the time. I wasn't following any of the stuff that was happening at this particular time. This was 2 days before my birthday last year. Did we actually, the city council never took any action at all, let alone, so did they actually approve, or did they approve looking into taking legal action, or did they actually approve taking action? Does anybody have the actual motion? Can you please bring that up on the monitor for me to review?
A resolution that was passed, but I don't believe it was ever acted on. At least being on the water committee at some point in time, there was nothing that came out of it. Mr. Hawley, you would know better than I in terms of anything coming out of this. We never pushed for any kind of litigation against RCH because it took a total violation because of the Aqua event purchase. Nothing came of that. It was pretty superficial to start with. It was more of a proclamation on the part of an individual, more than anything in my mind.
In fact, I've never been, until it just came up, I don't know, last week, I guess. Nobody's ever even brought it up to me.
Councilmember Day, do you have anything then?
Yeah, what was the end result? I could see who makes the motion and who seconds it is really not relevant. How did they vote on it last time? Was it a 5-0? 4. You were absent, and then Jennifer Hoffman voted yes. Okay, I see what I need to see. Thank you.
So I'll add real quick. Mayor Pro Tem and Tucker and Councilmember Easter have worked diligently hard on all things water since we put them to the task. And so to go with what Councilmember Easter said, anytime we as a city can show any sort of good faith, I think it's always prudent for us to do so, because our interest is for the city in a totality. And so I applaud these two gentlemen for putting this out there, because it does give us now to be able to sit down and have that second meeting, and it gives a motion to show we're here to work with you guys. And to Councilmember Easter's point, then yes, it should, to me, open up the other discussions, with the franchise fees. We showed a good faith back, almost like a good hostage negotiation. Negotiator's a great movie to get that from. So for me, I applaud you guys. Thanks for everything you did. We've had the motion and the second. If there's no other discussion, then I'll call it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. That will pass 4-1. So at this time, I am going to, for the folks here, we've addressed all the items in business. We're going to go into an executive session, so you'll probably not want to hang out. But we, either have executive sessions before or after, but not during your time. So at 8:51, we will adjourn to executive session. Can I put us in a recess, like 5 minutes before, and then from there just continue on when you come back out here? Okay. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess first, and then we'll be in executive session, let's say at 9 o'clock, so 8 minutes. Thank you.
The whole thing is about Aqua. That's what I was saying in your notes there. That was about the Aqua situation. Because I was like, are we saying they didn't do Talmud violations? Because they clearly were.
Well,
But we didn't have any.
Wanted to press litigation against RCH for Talmud violations. And so we don't press on any litigation.
So even if it was a mistake taken by them, we're not taking action on that. Is what you're saying. Okay, that's why I thought I was reading.
We never pressed the corner.
It's not, what was the cake? It was, for Mark.
Oh, boy,
I thought it was me. Beefcake. No, kidding.
yeah.
She did a really good job, but the public needs.
beard. It's very distinguished.